successful, and we had long lines around the abundance. And by the way, if it lowers your standard of living, you had too high one anyway. And along came Ronald Reagan. Are we at about the same space here?
Exactly. If you want to get into Carter, we could go on for 3 hours. Carter, when he first got in, his big thing was human rights. So he went to the Russians, and he got along well with them. They kissed each other on the cheek. And weeks later, the Russians figured this is the most naive guy we've ever seen. They invaded Afghanistan. And because they invaded Afghanistan, bin Laden goes down there to fight the Soviets, and they create Al-Qaeda. After this is all over, that's where Al-Qaeda was created. So you can tag that one onto Jimmy Carter, and the Soviets took over 7 countries under Carter: Ethiopia, South Yemen, Nicaragua, all sorts of places. Now, on top of that, you can Obama the other day was blaming George Bush for Iran. Jimmy Carter is the one that went to Iran, pulled all of our military weapons from Iran that had been a long ally of ours. He pulled the rug out from under him, and he felt that the mullah that was up in Paris, France, would be a much better ruler because he was religious. I know someone that was in downtown Tehran when the overthrow was occurring, and they were broadcasting Jimmy Carter's speech in downtown Iran. And so you can tag that one onto Jimmy Carter. He was upset the Shah had about 15 to 20 communist spies in his prison that he was torturing, and Carter felt we had an inordinate concern about communism, and he did not like the Shah, and he pulled the rug out from under him, and we lost Iran because of Jimmy Carter. On top of that, he went to North Korea and made all these deals with North Korea. So Carter has been so naive that this is risky to put somebody that's inexperienced and doesn't know how to deal on an international basis into the presidency.
Well, talking about energy, focusing on that for a minute, though, didn't Ronald Reagan come along and say, gosh, fellas, if we have a shortage of supply and the price is too high, why don't we just ramp up the supply?
Yes, and also he came in. They had price controls on natural gas, and he removed them, and the Democrats screamed, oh, the price is going to go roaring up. That's when they broke the price back, and it started down, and interest rates started down, and we solved most of the problems that Jimmy Carter had created by his inability to handle things.
Well, I think that's my recollection, too. I don't think we have a Reagan on the horizon, however, since the Republican nominee, Senator John McCain,
said that he didn't like the Bush tax cuts, but he's changed his mind on that. I think he's a pretty interesting maverick. You got to remember that Winston Churchill was a maverick. He was on both sides of the fence, a liberal, a conservative. He was all over the place. I think that McCain will slowly come around to this. He believes in certain environmental things, but I would give it a little bit of time. Also, this age thing is nonsense. The 2 best presidents we've had in the United States were Harry Truman, who was over 60, and Ronald Reagan, who was over 70. So it's experience and common sense and judgment that you acquire from years of being in the world, the real world. And even when JFK, as nice a guy as he was, when he went to see the Russians, they immediately put missiles in Cuba because they thought he was so young and inexperienced. So that's what you're dealing with when you have somebody that's young and inexperienced. So I think the age is a tremendous advantage for McCain, and people need to understand that you want judgment. You don't want just inexperience.
William J. O'Neill, Bill O'Neill, I want to hang on and get one more segment with you, because I want you've looked at the stock market for a long time. I want to find out, what is the stock market telling us today? Because it is always telling us something. We're never quite sure, maybe until later on, what it was telling us, but I think you have some insights, and I want to get back with you on that. William J. O'Neill, the founder and chairman of the Investors Business Daily, a newspaper, a publication that I have characterized on this program as the thinking person's Wall Street Journal.
Tales from a business trip.
Has kept off limits lands under which there is a huge reserve of oil in this country, in the Gulf of Mexico, continental shelf, tar sands, the Bakken field, the Anwar, and all the rest of it. Given that we know that it's supply that's the problem and the demand is growing with China and India, and given that the Democrats and some Republicans as well, constantly putting these lands off limits to drilling so that we become more dependent on OPEC and foreign oil and more dependent on these dictators and transferring more wealth to them than has ever been seen in the history of this world. What do we, the people who are now filling up at $4 a gallon plus today to drive over and see their relatives on the holiday, what do we do about this?
All right. The problem in the stock market is mainly the price of oil going up so much. And people should get on the phone and call Congress and tell them that they need to get off of this business of doing nothing, and they need to accept some responsibility themselves and do something positive. They need to open up and let us drill in Anwar, where we know that we've got a million barrels a day that we can get out of there. Sure, it'll take a couple of years, but you'll send a message to the world that we're now going to get serious and do something rather than being obstructionists. They should open up and let us get into some of these government areas that have shale. We know that we've got tons of oil there. Open up some on the outer sea. And you can do some things also, provide some incentives for Americans to buy hybrids. Provide some incentives for them to turn in and scrap an old gas guzzler or to turn it in for parts or something. Maybe they can help the dealers with an incentive as well as the public with an incentive. So there are a lot of things that can be done to correct the problem. They haven't done one single positive thing. They need to get off the dime and do something constructive rather than just trying to spend all their time pointing the blame. So that would do more than anything else. The other is that we need to finish winning in Iraq, which we're doing right now, because Iraq will come online with more oil, and you'll have a democratic country there that we can deal with rather than pulling out and letting Iran take over, and now you're going to have even more oil in the hands of the bad guys. So I think that there's a lot, but Americans have got to understand and they got to call Congress on this grandstanding of trying to have all this PR and make them supposedly look good. They look like fools when they're standing up there asking all these dumb questions and not doing anything and trying to penalize and more. 70% of oil is used to make gasoline. And China and India are building hundreds of thousands of cars right now, and they're selling them to their people. And the demand for gasoline from China and India is going to grow this year and next year and next year. And Congress has to get off and do something positive. And that's the answer to it. And I don't think the market has much of a problem except this oil thing that Congress is causing.
Bill O'Neill, wise words. Do you agree with Stephen Lieb in his book that oil is going to $200 a barrel, given the trends we're in now? I mean, unless something reverses, as you just described. Do you think we're going to $200 or $300 or $400? I mean, where's the end of this?
I think that the price of oil could be broken very easily if Congress stepped up and said we're now going to allow drilling in Anwar and on the deep sea and in the shale areas. And then after they make that kind of a positive move, then you let out some of the petroleum reserve, and that'll break the price of oil. But as long as we're not willing to drill for ourselves and help ourselves, they're just going to keep tightening the noose. And yes, the price can go almost to any level, but it can be broken very easily. But you've got to do something to increase the supply of oil, the production of it. And we've got it, and we know where it is, but Congress has not let us drill for it, which has shown how incompetent they've been for 30 years.
And isn't the country of Brazil, for all of its socialist leanings of its president and its collectivist history, aren't they showing us the way on this very thing?
Well, yeah, they found one of the biggest fields offshore, and they've got 18 drilling rigs out there right now, and they're trying to get as many as they can to develop this oil field. And even Cuba and people like that and China are drilling off our shores, and we're not allowed to drill, which is absolutely absurd. And that's your Democratic Congress. Somebody's got to call them on this sort of thing. The media doesn't say much about it, but these are the facts of what we're doing. We're doing absolutely nothing, just sitting there taking it.
Well, Bill O'Neill, thanks very much for being with me today. I appreciate your time and your expertise, and I appreciate your publication, The Investor's Business Daily. As I said, I think the best editorial writing around, and thanks for being there.
Okay, thanks now.
Appreciate it. William J. O'Neill, founder and chairman of Investor's Business Daily. And some wise words. Now, do you agree or disagree? I want to take some phone calls when we come back after the top of the hour.